Hello, this is Casey Green, the founding director of the Campus Computing Project and a senior research consultant to Inside Higher Ed. I'm pleased to welcome you to this webinar titled Instructional Design for Mobile Learning. The webinar, sponsored by Academic Partnerships, will feature a presentation by Dr. David Metcalf, the director of the METIL lab at the University of Central Florida. Let's begin with a few housekeeping issues ahead of the webinar. First, we encourage your questions. We'll do our best to answer questions throughout the presentation. However, as you can see, there are a large number of people registered for this program, already have checked in, so please understand, we will not be able to answer all the questions. Please enter your questions in the text field at the bottom of the Q&A window and then click the speech balloon. Note, you'll be able to see your own questions and any direct answers, but not all the questions from all the participants. Also note that your question will include your name. Please include your institution or title with your question if you'd like us to mention it if we bring the question forward as part of the discussion for the webinar. And to anticipate a question that at least one person will ask even before the formal presentation begins, yes, a PDF copy of David Metcalf's presentation will be posted to a website for this session following the webinar. The webinar participants will receive a follow-up email with information for a URL that will contain for the archive of the webinar and the PDF file for the presentation. Also, before we begin, we want to let you know that this webinar also serves as an introduction for a micro-MOOC titled Instructional Design for Mobile Learning. The micro-MOOC introduces key instructional design principles for teaching with mobile technology and was designed and developed by Academic Partnerships and available on the Canvas network. As of this morning, there remain some 70 open slots for this micro-MOOC. You can find more information about the instructional design micro-MOOC at canvas.net. And with that, David Metcalf, the webinar is yours.
Well, thanks, Casey. You've got a lot to cover today. This intro to the really designed to give you some grounding and also to provoke questions that you have answered and want to participate in throughout the rest of the week. So I really encourage you to use the micro-MOOC as well as to also type into the Q&A, and we'll be seeing that. You can also look at the using the tweet hashtag IDML13 down at the bottom. So let's think about that as well too as we proceed through the materials. So our agenda today is, again, kind of jam-packed. We want to give you a good introduction and overview, discussing what is mobile learning, and then look at some of the learning theories that are informed by and able to be used with the mobile format, followed by some design principles and plenty of examples of where those have come into play. And then finally ending it off with a discussion on where do we start and how to get started in this. So for those of you that don't know much about my affiliations, I'm at the University of Central Florida, which is located in Orlando, and it is the largest undergraduate population in the U.S. and second largest campus in the U.S. behind Arizona State. A lot of computer science students, a lot of game designers. So we are responsible for helping to build some of that material, but also, more importantly, to look at the ways that we can help and work with outside organizations too through the Institute for Simulation and Training, which is trying to coordinate and deliver some of the information that we're looking at out to the public. So I'm going to do a quick sound check. Can you hear me? Maybe you could give me a quick sound check. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you. Appreciate that. My specific laboratory at the university is called the Mixed Emerging Technology Integration Lab, METIL for short. And we've worked in a number of different areas of industry, academia, government, as well as nonprofits to help them with integrating mobile, games and sessions, virtual worlds into a lot of their learning environments. So that's some of the background that we come from in a research laboratory. So some of you may be completely new to this discipline, so I wanted you to have a chance to see a couple of definitions, and maybe this is a point of discussion too. I'd love to hear any other definitions that any of you have in the chat window, in the Q&A window. Please think about these that are on the screen now and enter them. So you see two definitions, one from the eLearning Guild, which I thought was okay. You know, it gives you some ideas about product use and consuming information, more like performance support, and the Wikipedia definition. Now, one of the things that I find is a problem with this is that these definitions really focus on the technology. What they don't focus enough on is the learning principles which can be enabled, or more importantly, some of the societal principles in action. We're a more mobile society now than we've ever been, and some of the data proves that out too. But what does that mean in terms of our learning? So anybody have any thoughts on that? Interactive learning, learning anywhere, learning on the go. Yep.
David, this is Casey as the moderator. I just want to say what strikes me about the two definitions on screen is also that, as you said, they seem to focus on hardware. And it really is a matter of sort of unbundling what we used to think of as large modules of learning into much smaller modules that are appropriate for the devices that might be used by
yeah, so it's about the affordances of learning
learners. Is
as
that
well
correct?
as just the devices. So I think that's something we need to get our heads around and maybe even unpack in the micro MOOC some too. I really like some of the things that I'm seeing in there, learning on the go, learning anywhere, learning any place, any time, or some of the different things that are popping up in our windows. So it's more than I could go through, but you'll see some of this in your review of this session. So also, while we're doing this, anybody have a bonus answer for what's the definition of a MOOC, a massively online open course? Anybody have a good definition there? I know that there were a couple that were posted when we had the sign-ups too. So yeah, Jonathan Cunningham, appreciate you submitting that as well too. A few of others of you are starting to submit too. So great. You'll see those in the logs for the Q&A coming up too. With so many of you too, can only get to a few of them as you would suspect. So one of the things that I've looked at is this source called the Golden Triangle, really where value creation for our society is coming. And mobile is at the top of that pyramid, along with social and real time. You know, when do we want things? We want now. How do we want them? We want them in a mobile capacity because our society is more mobile. We're more on the go than ever. And the social context of how not only social media is being used, but also social networks and the interactions and collaboration that is required in our society is growing. So mobile in ways is a response to those changes in communication patterns and some of the affordances that we have for learning. Other things really start with a good needs analysis and the desired learning outcomes, understanding the organizational requirements of your university or institution, looking at the device selection and availability, and really looking at the user context. Are we talking about having learning in the classroom? Are we talking about it as something that is ancillary to the classroom that helps support the learner outside? Those are all things to consider. The other thing that I love is that many of the learning theories that have been proven over many years but were impractical to try and integrate because of our normal drive towards a very objective and objectivist-oriented learning model are now possible. So the technology and delivery methods are finally catching up to, in my view, some of the innovative learning theories that have proven to be educationally beneficial and pedagogically sound or sound for adult learners. I really love, too, that you can use your mobile device for authentic learning. So if you think about the context of any time, any place, some of the definitions that you guys were throwing out there in the Q&A area, you know, these are all examples of ideas for that immediate responsiveness. The essential modes of work when you're mobile change and become very self-directed and communicative. Even the Google search blank or another search engine search blank is an example of that. You have a question, you have a keyword, you put that in there and you get information back. That is a formative and pretty constructivist way of delivering and finding out more information in those areas. So if the learner has some idea of what they need to know and some idea of the context in which they need to know it, then they can build their own pathways to the learning using constructivist techniques. Some would call this discovery learning. Those are all kind of valid ways of looking at this. One of the things that I like is this notion of something we've been doing called a learning theory mashup, where you can take these different techniques, the same way that you would with a technology mashup, which is taking smaller discrete elements of technology and combining them in new and unique ways. You don't have to stick to just one learning theory. You could have a very objectivist learning model that meets all of your accreditation practices, but then you can sprinkle in some of your constructivist learning exercises, which would be project-based or team-based learning. And mobile is really a great enabler for this. Think about mobile scavenger hunts, either in the classroom or outside the classroom. These are all things that you can facilitate very easily using mobile devices and mobile technology if we don't get locked into just one particular modality. Here's an example of some of those different learning theories, and some of them you may know or may not know, but they can be blended together in unique combinations. So, of course, constructivism or discovery learning, going and doing projects where you're pulling information together and putting them into a mental framework. Jigsaw, which is a technique that's been proven for years to divide up the subject matter content and be able to put that together into meaningful framework, having the students kind of construct their pathway through the learning. These can all be very, very compelling ways to integrate the information in either a classroom setting or a self-paced online setting. How many of you are thinking about self-paced for a lot of your material versus synchronous or instructor-led? Maybe just give a little instructor-led, ILT or asynchronous or online. We'll see if people start to chime in on that. I've also found that being able to have a strong sense of narrative, or in some cases like ITI, integrated thematic instruction, where you can have an ongoing theme that can be used as mental scaffolding for the material, is also enabled by the use of mobile technologies. As is having a mentor or a guide through the material, if you are going to do something that's either synchronous or that has a strong coaching or mentoring model. GELS, guided experiential learning, is something that's been proven out a number of times. Richard Clark from California. And then even some of the mental models and learning models behind the MOOC structure, like connectivism, which is used in some of the MOOC models, can be very much geared towards that discovery-oriented and social learning theory process kind of combined. And mobile can be a great enabler of that. There's also a lot to be said for thinking about the outcomes and continuing to look at the way that outcomes can be leveraged and look at say something like authentic assessments that can be integrated in, even using game-like elements inside of your learning. So, Casey, any thoughts on that for us?
I'm trying to track the questions. We've got a lot of people offering comments about a lot of these issues. It seems to me that I think the mashup is the one that probably encaptures it all. Sort of the theory and the model and the mechanism and the technology that fit the context, the need, and the
one learning
requirements of
theory
the learner
for the
to make
whole
sense
of
to
your
me.
course.
What do you think, David?
You can break it down at a level of granularity lower, where you're thinking about the learning theory as you look at each exercise, each maybe learning object, depending on what your level of fidelity or breakdown structure of your particular course is. So I wanted to start into some guiding principles. Got about 5 of these that I thought might be useful to you to kind of help you frame up how you're going to do things. A lot of the work we are doing, we're trying to develop once and deliver in many different formats. So if you think about that, that means that you may have multiple delivery modes. The same time that you're building your paper-based assets for a classroom setting, you could be building your online in something like HTML5, which is the newest version of web delivery that has advanced interactivity, even replicating some of the features that some of you may have seen in tools like Adobe Flash, etc. And try and build something once and deliver it out in multiple formats. So an example of that was a couple of years ago, we started helping out at our College of Medicine, which was just launched in 2009. And we needed to build a number of assets really from the ground up in both the curriculum and also in our medical practice. So in addition to the enterprise systems, like the initial use of Blackboard, which is now being transitioned to Canvas, and building out some games for the med students, as well as simulations using standardized patients and virtual patients, like the avatars you see down in the lower portion of this screen. And then also looking at the use of mobile and 3D, and putting those all together in a package. So that gives you one example of where you can develop once and deliver in many different formats. That included delivering in a iPad and iPod Touch format, as each of the students was given one of these, as were the faculty, when they entered the College of Medicine. So on a daily basis, that is their main access to the ICT systems within the university, including curriculum, including specialized medical applications like their histology lab manual, their virtual family for being able to track the different elements, and also some of the other areas. So one of the things that you may want to know too, for those of you that are looking to track the questions in the Q&A, is you may want to also post those into the Twitter feed using a hashtag of IDML13. So if you guys would like to do that, you'll be able to better track each other's questions pretty openly. So think about that as well too. And we will keep having some stopping and natural breakpoints that we can go back to and give us some more information. So some people think of messaging and think of the idea that apps are the most important thing, or maybe apps and web, that those are some of the different things that you might consider. I'd want to call your attention to the fact that messaging has been extremely important in most of the major both learning campaigns and some of the biggest deliveries of online and mobile education across the globe. In fact, a study by the Learning Guild a couple years ago showed that of 1,000 companies, the number 1 and 2 applications were email and text messaging for delivery of mobile learning. So you say, well, that's not really practical. You can't deliver anything inside of a text message. It's too small. But if you think about breaking into small chunks of content information that are delivered with some immediacy, you can then have a link to web material or an app that has much more complex and detailed information. So it's not really one or the other. It's how all of these things start to work together. And many of you already have really strong email and sometimes even text messaging policies that allow you to use these in conjunction with podcasts or apps or mobile and web development. So how many of you are actually building mobile learning apps now? I'd like to just have you guys maybe chime in with a quick yes inside of the Q&A, and I'll try and give you a rough feel for how many people come up of the some 480 plus people that we have in here right now too. So I see a number of you saying yes, 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 yes. You're also using Blackboard Mobile, yes, at Ivy Tech. So I built several, trying with tools right now. Not building but interested. Not sure how to build. We're going to get to that too. But here's some aspects of building mobile apps. So you can have rich media. All your content can stay local inside of the particular application that you're building. So you can have some high-end features. You can even use things like the camera in your app, or you can use the GPS in there to tell your location. There's a number of what's called SDKs, software development kits, which usually require a programmer to build Apple, Android, Microsoft, or BlackBerry applications that are native. They have a unique code base, but those are some of the things that you might consider if you're thinking about this. The other way to build things that feel like apps is to use the web browser that is on each phone and to deliver web content that can display on devices. How many of you are considering this approach? We'll take a pause now and just put yes in there now, and I'm going to kind of start tracking from one of the ones that just said yep. So I see a number of you saying me, yes, yes, yes. Oh, lots of yeses here. So many of you are already onto this strategy. You can have your same web developers have a couple of different libraries of code and also maybe use some cross-platform applications like PhoneGap, for instance, or Titanium, or a few other tools that aren't necessarily only for programmers. Sometimes instructional designers with some technical background can also get their arms around these tools and make those more available. So think about that a little bit too. Those are some things that you might be able to do to develop once and deliver across many platforms, and then also be able to, with HTML5, deliver and link into the LMSs, as Dave was just saying as well too in the chat dialogue. So those are all things to consider there too. And if you want to see other people's comments, or if you guys don't mind also posting into the Twitter log too, that will allow you to see each other's comments. It's just too overwhelming to have those and distracting to have those going throughout the presentation. So here's some tips for mobile web usability. If you have a website right now for your college or university, you can go to ready.mobi inside of your browser, and you can type in the URL, and this will tell you how mobile ready your content is already, and also give you a whole list of changes like the ones you see in this list of 7 right here that you could use to actually go through and define some changes that you could easily make to your website that will make them more mobile friendly. This is maybe a good place to start for those either just getting started or thinking about how to do this. And then you would have an assessment that you could either do yourself or give to other people and give that to someone else. There's also a hybrid mode too that allows you to build the best of both worlds, where you can build for the web and using HTML5 and then use those components inside of what's called a app shell or a wrapper. That wrapper allows you to combine some of the features of a mobile web inside of a mobile app and deliver that. Tools like PhoneGap and Titanium Appcelerator, RareWire, and others allow you to do that. How many of you are looking at doing podcasting? Please put a yes inside of there too, and I'll give you a rough count of who that is too as you start to see that. So good, a number using podcasting too. So this is much, much more popular too with the advent of tools like the one that I'm going to bring up here next, which is iTunes U. So many of you are probably posting things. I know by looking at the list that a number of you are posting things with iTunes U. Dave Nume are saying yes, and a number of others of you are saying yes to using iTunes U. So for those of you that aren't familiar with this, iTunes U is a place that you can freely post and share your content curriculum. And you can share both audio and video podcasts, basically recordings that you made either in the classroom or you've custom made for that. And the nice new feature that they have, in addition to having so many thousands of schools and content that you can pull from other areas, is that they also have a new course manager, which allows you to better coordinate your curriculum inside of the iTunes U environment. There's also a new capability for calling up iBooks as well too, so interactive e-textbooks that you might have as well, and deliver those either for free or for a charge too. So a few things to think about in the delivery modes. What I would also encourage you to look at is the use of text messaging and SMS. SMS is short message service. And to think about some of the usability if you are going to try and use this for learning. Think about some of the ways that characters are limited in here, the same way that in Twitter you have a limitation of 140 characters. You have 160 characters with spaces for text messages. But we've had many campaigns where you actually can start to integrate this technology too. And I want to open your mind to that too and have you start to think about that a little bit. How many of you are using text messaging in some of your learning campaigns or inside of your courses right now, either for student coordination, etc.? I see a few of you, Gail, saying that you are. A few, yeah, a few. Not as many as some of the other modalities, but some of you are seeing that that is usable. So, great question too. Mobile screams for flexible organic courses that grow over time. Does this render the traditional syllabus obsolete from NOLAB? It's a great question. Kind of leads to the next point that I was going to make, is that it's really not an either or. It's more of an and. You know, we did a MOOC that had a lot of mobile in it for MobiMOOC, and I'll describe that a little bit more later. You can also think about the things like location-based services, user-generated content, and how your discussion boards are coming alive and growing out from just being a traditional discussion board to something that's much more robust with social networking tools and collaboration. These are all technologies to watch that are starting to be integrated into these more organic course forms that you talk about too. So great comments that you guys are having too. So love to see some from you guys. Yes. Right.
David, let's take a break for a moment. So you've talked about a range of technologies, from the simple to the sophisticated. Some folks are fortunate to be at institutions that have rich and talented instructional designers for their help. Others pretty much are trying to do it on their own. So let's take a couple of points along the way.
Yeah, well, I would
if I'm a non-techie and I want to do this,
and
what
people don't tell you when they're trying to sell you a whole suite of tools is what you may already have everything that
what's
you
a
need.
safe way for me
you
to
may already
start
have the development tools and have websites that with just a few simple tweaks could be mobile ready, and then you have a mobile web solution. May not be the highest end use in mobile to really get the full affordances of learning, but it's a great place to start, and it's something that you can do fairly easily just with a little bit of simple assessment and maybe a few changes by your webmaster at your university or your partner that helps you do that. So that would be something that I would really encourage people to do. And we'll end with a list of these that go into more detail as well too, but those would be things that you might consider.
And if I'm not a techie, if my background isn't writing code and I'm a little uncomfortable with this, again, if I'm looking for kind of like
in addition to your web resources, many times even just having a camera or audio recording device and recording lectures and putting those into a simple form submit interface, places like Apple with iTunes U, if you're an accredited EDU university, then you'll be able to do that for free. And those are easy ways to get started that you can start to test and then iterate to see how successful that is. So if you can fill out a web form, you can probably upload your media files from a recording and do that. So those are things that you might be able to do with an instructor or you're inside of the course development areas of your universities. Great comments. So I want to show you a couple other examples. We've been doing this again at our College of Medicine with some of our virtual patients and building out simulations that incorporate mobile into those areas. So we're also looking at some really simplified ways of delivering things even in text messages and email for places like Google. And Google came to us and said we want to try and do something called G-Learning, which is really a mashup of a lot of their tools, which most of them are free tools that are available: YouTube, Gmail, Google Docs, and be able to use that to teach leadership in their organization. And these slides, the screens are intentionally too small for you to really read. That's with Google's permission that we use these. But to be able to have an email that can say, "Welcome to Foundations of Leadership Training. Watch this video from Sergey Brim at the link below." You click on the link either in your text message or email, and it launches that video. At the end of that video, there's either a keyword or some other instruction that tells you what to do next. And you can use this to kind of almost have a game-like interface that keeps track of every single thing that someone does throughout their learning curriculum, but breaks it up into small chunks that can be delivered in multiple email or text messages or voice messages throughout the week, and kind of put those together in a unique cadence for the delivery. So those are a few things that you might think about. We actually did an empirical study of this too with Google, and we had 972 participants. Beforehand, they had a 30% start rate. After using this technique, which had the learning right there in their inbox for them, we actually saw a 94% completion rate. The other thing that we did to get to that kind of design solution was we had a leaderboard that was visible to them that showed them how they were doing against all of the other people in those classes too. So those are some of the different things that we were able to do. It's just a question about bring your own device too. Google does have Android devices, but we actually started this when they had not put a Google device and Android device into everyone's hands, and it had to work across all the different devices. So some of these solutions are again optimized for being able to have multiple devices, which I know many of your environments are at this point. How many of you are from outside the U.S.? Just say yes if you have that, or maybe put your country name into there, and we'll see what that looks like. So I see a number of you saying yes, yes, yes. I see some Canadians, Jamaica, UAE, Brazil, Germany. Well, welcome. One of the things that I like to remind what is very much a U.S.-centric audience, if you look at the numbers, we've got close to 500 people. We've had about 50 or 60 say they're from outside of the country. Here in the U.S. is that M-learning is much bigger than the U.S. Some of the most successful campaigns that I've seen have used the same type of messaging techniques like I was showing with Google to promote things like an HIV campaign in South Africa they had over 1 billion messages, and that translated into 15 million people getting help, and a change in not only understanding facts and understanding processes, but also a change in attitudes and behaviors. Some of the hardest things to do, we as educators find, is to change attitudes and behaviors, and we started to see that. We've been incorporating that at UCF in some of the things that we've been doing in Haiti to try and help kind of almost leapfrog some of the technology we have in the US. These little pico projectors like you see in the hands of this, this hand over here on the left-hand side, and the ability to use a smartphone together with that and a microloan so that they can actually afford this technology is something that we're finding gives you a classroom in a box. So even in really remote areas, you can have these very simple solutions with this technology that, again, don't require instructional design skills per se, but require having access to the knowledge of the world and making that available in really remote areas. These are things that we think we're going to continue to see, and love to see you guys doing more of that as well too. We're also looking at integrating some of the other things like not just projectors, but digital pens and other tool sets that allow you to have a whole mobile ecosystem of tools. This has really been handy inside of the healthcare space too when we've been doing healthcare education, because you can even have things like a blood glucose meter that automatically connects to your mobile device. But where I think this is more telling for you guys in the classroom, it's like having a know-it-all professor at your shoulder if you think about some of what's coming. Many of you probably use Siri on your Apple devices and have access to a voice-based search. I got to see something really incredible last year with Watson from IBM, which is the same technology that won against the Jeopardy Grand Champions, and allows you to just speak a question, and when you speak the question, it comes back with a spoken word answer to you, just be whispered in your ear through an earpiece if you have a mobile device. Mobile access to this level of sophisticated artificial intelligence is changing the way that doctors are practicing, changing the way that you would have a number of different people that are looking at the way that you can get access to information just in a matter of seconds and have a lot of that information. We're seeing this inside of mobile and healthcare too, and some of you may be in the healthcare professions or teaching healthcare. So those are some things that you might find interesting to think about. All these different areas where learning or performance occurs throughout the preceptorship, medical education, and mHealth is becoming a growing trend as well too, that I know many of you are involved in. Other trends to watch. Sure, Casey.
David, if I may, let me just interject one question. I'm looking at the Q&A, and I know that we know that higher education is very concerned about FERPA issues, healthcare with HIPAA issues. Your experience at UCF has no doubt wandered both domains.
Yeah, so when we did the leaderboards at Google, we
any
went into
concerns
restriction
in
because
the
these
planning
were behind their
development process about some issues about FERPA or HIPAA issues with some of this activity in either the student area or the medical areas?
If we were to take this out into the academic sphere,
data.
We traditionally either have a code for that student if we're going to do a leaderboard, or we don't do it. So that would be something to think about, of course, too. And if it's patient data, we never do things like that. So yeah, good call on that too. We're always using fictitious patients with our students or obfuscating the name in some way. So those are maybe some things to think about. Yeah, good call on that. So some of you may be wondering, why are we even focused on mobile? Mobile is getting huge. If you look globally, 6.5 billion mobile phones. This number is probably out of date because it's from a couple of months ago. Over 1 billion smartphones, as some of the recent data. Most studies say that we are at 100% penetration of everyone having a cell phone who's above the age of 8 in the U.S. Some would say that those of us that have 2 or 3 accounts kind of change that trend a little bit, so it'd be more like 90%. But it's still a very high percentage in the U.S. Doctors have smartphones and tablets and are using them in the practice of medicine. And we're also seeing the kind of combination or unique link between mobile and casual games becoming a marketplace in and of itself. $2.5 billion in that particular field, and mobile and games growing quite rapidly. So some of the things we're trying to do is to try and incorporate some of the best of some game techniques, and also trying to experience some of the different learning techniques that we would use in conjunction with that. So how many of you are building games for learning in some way, shape, or form, or using game elements inside of your learning applications? Just hit yes inside of there. So are we saying yes, yes, yes? So yeah, it looks like this is a trend that's on the rise too. So why do you have to say either or? Why can't we kind of look at models that leverage both things? And that's something else to consider too. We did a game a few years ago for K-12, but we've been using the same moving knowledge engine behind the scenes to do this for higher ed as well as corporate education, like the Google example too, to combine text message, SMS, interactive voice response, which is like your voicemail, email, and web traffic into one unique game experience to try and promote time interval spacing of STEM education. And this can be an overlay to your classroom as an example too. And we saw 16% improvement in the interest in math and science careers in 7th graders, and we also saw an 11% improvement in their actual academic performance too. So, some would say significant results on our empirical studies on that. And we did that not only here in the U.S. in several locations, a couple thousand students, but also in places like Sweden, Uganda. We had a pilot test in UAE and China as well too. I saw a couple of you from other places across the globe too. And we've continued to do types of games like this too that use what's called responsive design to build one interface, again, that develop once, deliver many model, that allow you to have this ongoing, in this case, Facebook-style social game. Again, this is for a little bit younger audience. But as they try and grow their skills around learning about what food to eat, to have enough energy to complete little neighborhood missions, skills, strength, agility, and speed, you could substitute that out with knowledge, skills, and abilities of your own. Anything that goes up in levels, like going from a pre-med student all the way up to chief of medicine or chief of surgery in a hospital, are examples of things that you can use to go and build out this environment where you have these more sophisticated and complex ways of dealing with that type of information. But one of the things that's really nice is that you can build this once and it works across a BlackBerry, an Android, an iPhone. It works across some of the Microsoft platforms. It even works on your desktop browsers, all from one responsive design model. So those are a couple of other things to keep in mind too as you start to build these out. This is a game that's freely available to play as well too, supernutritiongame.com if you want to see an example too. So sponsored by Johnson & Johnson. We've also been building out some of the other interactive games in the corporate space which inform the way that we might do things like campus tours, the ability to define on a map certain learning locations. And one of the things that you'll see when you look at this with the learning locations is it can, in this case, launch a video of features of Mini Cooper from one of our spin-off companies, Ology Interactive, from our laboratory. And as you maybe take a hairpin turn in the car, it launches a video on traction control for the other 3 passengers in the car, not for the driver, and allows you to kind of play a little context-based game. How many of you teach accounting in your university, or have that as one of the subjects in your university? Probably quite a number of you. Yeah, just click yes inside of your Q&A for me. Some of you raise your hands as well as click yes, either way. So maybe let's spend a minute on this too. It's a guy who's become quite well known from our university, Dr. Stephen Hornick, who teaches business here. He first got known for doing a 4-year study of the use of Second Life for teaching accounting, which he called, ironically, really engaging accounting. So some would say that's an oxymoron, but he used these interactive manipulatives like you see on the screen here to go in and be able to define and show how you would do assets and liabilities, be able to watch lectures. And UCF has grown quite a bit. We had courses that were about 200 students that have now gone up to 800 students. So This technique, along with some of the mobile elements that we produce to allow you to have the same experience or similar experience mobile device with those same interactive calculators that you would have inside of the 3D virtual world, actually led to a performance outcome of 1 letter grade improvement. Now, I don't know about your universities, but at our university, Accounting 101 is a weed-out course. So 1 letter grade means that you're going from, in his case, a high F, low D to a passing C with the use of this technology. So, while we oftentimes strive for no significant difference in our learning modalities and delivery techniques, this is an example where the learning modality and delivery technique actually compensated for the size of the classes. So those are some things that you might consider or think about too. And he's got some empirical research on that on mydebitcredit.com as well too, if you want to go and analyze the data and see if it makes sense in your organization. One of the things I think we all need to focus on, and I think you heard it too from Casey when we were talking about where we are right now, we need to develop our talent pool. We're very focused on that at UCF, trying to make sure that we not only have enough mobile app developers and instructional designers who understand the affordances of learning in the mobile context, and also project managers who can pull these things off pretty quickly, but also trying to build enough of those for our whole pipeline of companies that we serve if we do outside projects or other universities that need help as well too. So in that spirit, we've got a lot of processes, education, applications. We also, just like Academic Partnerships is running this micro-MOOC, we ran something called MobiMOOC in Europe a couple years ago. Had 1,000 participants each time in that MobiMOOC, and I'll give you a little bit more data on that as well too. Did anybody participate in MobiMOOC? If you would type yes inside of the link, just love to see if we have any people who are coming back there too. And I see a few people of you who at least knew about it too. Yes, 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 a few knows as well too. We also formed our own club in our computer science area called the UCF Mobile Makers, or Mobile Makers Club, and it's a team of students that self-organized and got together to have a club for mobile development. We oftentimes ask them to help us with special projects too, as part of the way that they learn. And really the need for partnerships becomes much, much more apparent. MobiMOOC, as an example of that, was run by Inge de Woord from the Institute for Tropical Medicine and in Belgium, and she was a founder. She recruited 5 of us as faculty, about 1,000 students from across the globe, and you can actually go and see a slide share on her results, and also the materials are still available, free open source out there on the web too. Might be some good things that you would want to use or leverage inside of, for those of you that are doing the micro-MOOC, to incorporate into your responses in that too. So there's a little tip for those of you that are going to be doing this. So measurable results, constructivist and connectivism type of learning theory models, and gave the typical varying levels of participation and lower completes than actual starts. But those were things that we would kind of expect as well too. Our university is really trying to focus again on these partnership models too, where we can not only as a public nonprofit university help with global impact projects, things that help with Millennium Development Goals, but also help other NGOs, government or industry partners to do some of these larger projects or grants that they want to try and help with. And again, we're very externally focused on those in my laboratory. But part of that model is too to try and grow those next generation of leaders and to spin off some of the companies that might have strong commercial potential in these areas too. So these are things that we're constantly focused on. An example of this from one company called Ology Interactive that we have helped spin off from the laboratory has done things like some of the McGraw-Hill assets, like the Sherris Infection Illustrated mobile app, which is available in the App Store for use. And they have their own model for delivery of mobile learning called Capillary, which is a nice tool for those that aren't programmers to be able to just drag and drop content from Marketplace into a mobile framework and then see a preview of what it's going to look like and build out some of your mobile education. So those are some things that you might think about too. And that is used to activate some of the spacing effect learning models too, which I really love because it helps to mitigate the forgetting curve that you usually have by having multiple repeat reminders, almost like the text messages that you could have as follow-up, or app examples that you have as follow-up to try and reinforce learning as it happens and occurs too. So these are a few of the things that you could do too. I do think the recording is going to be available to you later as well too, if I'm not mistaken. For those of you that are asking that, I saw a couple of you asking that inside of there. So for those of you that might be a little overwhelmed now, I thought it might be good to start to wind down into some ideas of how you could get started, like Casey was talking about too. So this is a list that I've really liked for a long time from Ellen Wagner, who used to head up learning at Adobe. And if you see here, these could really be about any type of technology project or ICT project that you're going to undertake. But you want to really pay attention to some of the things like question number 1, why a mobile learning project? Question number 4, what unique results will you achieve? And thinking about question 8, of course, how are you going to get it funded? And then hopefully no one forgets question 10 too, how will you evaluate your effectiveness too? These are all things to think about in advance of starting your project and to kind of do some good planning. Those are some things that you might really consider too when you start to look at this. So next, I have kind of a recommendations list, for if you're just getting started or just kind of thinking about this. Look for opportunities. And by that I mean sometimes there's a pressing learning need or a new course curriculum that's rolling out or an innovative project for your honors students or things like that that just scream for things to be done a little differently than the norm. Those are always great places to start because it's going to be all new anyway. New curriculum, new delivery mode, etc. You can focus on the user's context and needs too. Are they in the classroom? Are they online learners already? Are they in a technology discipline? Or are they in the humanities? Those will all make a difference in your audience and what their context and needs are. Do you know if they have phones? Is a phone provided at your university like some universities are blessed to have? Or is it anything and everything? You might have 20% iOS devices like iPhones and another 10% Windows Mobile, or you might have 50% Android devices, and you have to kind of plan for this strategy of whether you're bringing your own devices or building for just one platform. So those are all things to think about too. You also have to look at building out content in a modular format so that you can mix and match using some of the techniques we talked about today too, and also not get locked into just one delivery mode. So those are some things that you might think about too. Assess readiness. There's a number of different models like the TAM, the technology readiness models and stuff too, that you can look at to assess your readiness too. And begin with pilot initiatives oftentimes is something good if you haven't done it before already. Don't try and take on the whole university and convert it all to mobile in one day. Take some of those in modular approaches and pilot approaches too. So the other thing to think about too is to kind of follow the market, be ready to move. When you see new technologies that you think really do fit your particular university's or college's structure, those are things that you might be able to look at too. So some people are also talking about a couple things I'm seeing here that might be a good place to address. What are some assessment models to evaluate whether you've been effective in your mobile campaign? Well, these can be the key performance indicators for the university too, like your assessment techniques that you use in the classroom. Many of the different organizations we worked with have used things like metrics that matter or had some analytics that go along with their course evaluation. Those are some things you might think about. And you can even do that in the classroom.
David, if I may, let me push on that one a little bit. You know, in the evolution of online education over the last decade, we've seen a number of templates, a number of models, a number of rubrics, if you will, to help campuses begin to look at and do assessment and evaluation of their online courses. The mobile is still young. It's still in early stage development. Are there some very specific sources that you're aware of that for folks who are going in this direction, not only in terms of their development efforts, but to help guide their efforts about what should we be looking for?
Yeah, you know, I like a lot of the things that are coming out of places like UCLA and Eva Baker's, which
campus and each site and each context along the way
traditionally been, hotbeds for assessment in general too. But they're starting to look at ways that you can assess the effectiveness of different learning delivery modalities. Might be a place to look. You can also think about the assessment tools and course evaluation, maybe surveys that you're already using. And instead of going and starting from scratch, just modify those slightly. Maybe you can still have a valid instrument if you add 1 or 2 questions about the delivery modalities. Did you use any of the mobile resources available in this course? What did you think of the mobile resources in this scale of 1 to 5? Those are things that don't cost a whole lot, don't require you to go out and buy a new tool or integrate a whole new learning model. A learning assessment model, but would give you some of those metrics that you could at least start with. Great question.
You know, the other thing that strikes me is, just as we know with undergraduate curricula, that the traditional textbook publishers,
absolutely, in addition to building out
positive or negative
apps,
or agnostic
you're also
about
seeing
them, provide a lot of resources for faculty. Are we beginning to see the textbook publishers and others who provide content and instructional resources to the higher ed market also moving into the mobile arena the way they've done with websites and instructional supplements?
They're trying to provide them within the context of having the security around the textbook, flexible enough formats that you can access them from mobile devices as well too. So we are starting to see that from the larger publishers too, looking at some of the adaptive learning modules like those from LearnSmart and McGraw-Hill and some of the Pearson offerings and things like that too. You do start to see those becoming more prevalent. Great question.
And there's a question that's been posted as well that says a lot about the way that, sadly, we segment various learning initiatives. That online versus on campus are often viewed as being separate worlds as opposed to points on a continuum. Excuse me. And there's a comment that says mobile is not just for online learning, but should also be considered for traditional residential or on-campus courses, whether it's for full-time undergraduates and lower division courses or graduate students who are on campus in different ways. Would you, again, drawing on the
as you probably know from studying a lot of the big campuses across the country too, UCF is very much a blended model. We have 30 to 40% blended courses where you integrate the online and the traditional classroom meetings too. But even in the classroom meetings, we're seeing people use things like responseware and clicker responses on their mobile devices instead of having a separate device. And you're also seeing the lectures for those people in places that are maybe sick for a meeting or want to go back and review it in more detail. And those are sometimes things that are posted into private areas, much like iTunes U, that you can go and review later. So it is both a classroom surround as well as something that can be used for standalone education. And that's a great point too. Anolab, you had a good comment there too. I really appreciate that too. So some of you who are giving some good tips and feedback in here too, I hope you guys will be able to see that. So.
Let me also come to another comment that we've got on the Q&A
feed,
and that's the issue of collaboration.
Many discussion
we
boards
talk a lot about collaboration.
And
we talk about collaborative tools. How does collaboration play out in mobile based on the experience that you've had designing, developing,
their own mobile app or
with,
have a mobile
student audiences and with others at UCF?
So that's coming online much more readily now too. Some of the things that I would consider too is when you look at trying to do synchronous too, most of the major players like Adobe Connect, I saw a few of you were trying to connect with Adobe Connect, a few of you had success and a few had problems today using this forum for, you know, going to practice what you preach, be on a mobile device with Adobe Connect. Other tools like you know, Join.me, WebEx, GoToMeeting all have mobile accessible interfaces, and even some of them allow you to present from the mobile device too. So we're starting to see the synchronous tools as well as the asynchronous tools be usable in a mobile context, you know, much more frequently.
And David, we're getting a number of questions as we got midway through the webinar, people asking about tools. And again, you talked about a number of tools. We're not going to be able to resolve the tool issue in the limited time that we've got, but for those of you who are using tools and have had both good experiences and perhaps less good experiences, perhaps one way to share that information would be to go to the Twitter feed, provide some information about your experience with various kinds of tools. Again, we're going to aggregate the Twitter comments and we will post that along with the PDF after the webinar is over. So we'd like to strongly encourage you to do that. We are just essentially at the end of our time for this webinar. David, I'd want to thank you for your time and your expertise as you've brought it forward. I want to remind our audience that there will be an email that you will each receive shortly after the webinar. It will provide you with a URL where you'll be able to access the video, the archive of the webinar, the PDF copies of David's slides, the Twitter feed, some other information as well. My thanks to David and all of you for your participation. And as a reminder, you can register for the mini MOOC, which is sponsored by Academic Partnerships, by going to the Canvas network, www.canvas.net. For Academic Partnerships, for David and for myself, thank you again for